KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. The first guest appearance of the year of our friend David Boesel of For America, foramerica.org. And, I do have to say I'm a little hurt. It's, well into the new year, and apparently the new year was good to you because you're finally gracing us with your presence, sir. What a greeting that is.
I was thinking the last time we spoke, Kevin, we had the highest corporate tax rate in the world. And here we are, and now we don't. Isn't that? That's how far back it goes.
Well, exactly. I'm going to give you credit for that. So you took a little time off, and we're glad to have you back.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope everyone in Idaho is staying warm, as warm as they can, getting out in the slopes, skiing, and having fun, and not paying too much attention to some of the stupidity that comes out of the swamp these days.
Well, look, we need them to pay attention because that's how it's a little thing how we justify our livelihood there, buddy.
Well, that's true. It was. I really do recommend for all your listeners, watch the long form clip, the 45-minute clip of President Trump talking to congressional leaders the other day. The whole thing. Grab a cup of coffee, go on YouTube. You can find it there. It's a really important exercise. It was really fascinating to watch the whole thing, the give and take between the legislatures. I wish the president would do more of that. Transparency is so healthy for everybody involved. The Dianne Feinstein exchange and with Kevin McCarthy and the president, got a lot of the attention when she kind of pigeonholed the president into agreeing to voting for a clean DACA bill, and Kevin McCarthy, got him to walk that back. But one of the more fascinating exchanges that I thought involved John Cornyn, the majority leader in the Senate from Texas, in which he kind of like 2/3 of the way through expresses some frustration that this is not really going anywhere. These negotiations aren't really going anywhere, and says, "Well, Mr. President, we'll pass something, but we've got to know what it is that you'll sign." And the president wisely does not take that bait and kind of mulls that over for a few seconds. And he says, "Well, John, I'll sign what you give me." In other words, if anyone in Texas, I know this is an Idaho show, but it goes for your all's representatives as well. Nobody goes on the campaign stump and says, "If you elect me, I will go to Washington and wait to be told what the president will sign." That's just kind of, the leadership, congressional leadership, especially on the Republican side, that's the lens that they look through. They are so risk averse. They do not want to adjudicate anything controversial publicly. And they're just willing to just sit on their hands and wait to be told what the president will do, how the president views this. And it's just, it really was a really eye-opening exchange. Finally, you get to see that in public, where leadership really does not have a position on any of these things. And they're just waiting for the president to hold their hand and take all the slings and arrows for them.
Well, it's kind of like this show where you didn't even let me ask a question about it. You just jumped into the topic. David Boesel, I don't know who you've been seeing in our absence here, who you've been guesting on with their programs, but we run things a little differently here in Idaho.
All right, leader, you go for it.
Yeah,
you're the Jedi. I'm the Padawan learner.
Now, I got to tell you, ever since they made Luke a girl, I'm not into the new Star Wars. So,
see, you can't trust Disney with anything.
I'm just a curmudgeon here at KIDO Talk Radio. So, have people lost their mind? And by the way, our great friend David Boesel joining us, foramerica.org. But let's go into the coverage of the president's open meeting. And really, it's a case of how people see it. You had Glenn Beck yesterday playing the clip and going, he's trying to cut a deal. He's selling us out. You have Sean Hannity's perspective. And then we go to David Boesel. I'm sure you were very, very young. You were a little David Boesel, and you were monitoring the media even then. I just have a feeling you were doing that back in the day. Well before probably you went to first grade. I just have that feeling. So
I was a sick kid.
You were a special young man. But so then we go to our three cables. Fox covers it the way Fox does. CNN, at least initially, you have Dana Bash going, hey, this is I got to give him credit for this. And then you have Republicans Nicole Wallace, Republican Steve Schmidt, advocating for the 25th Amendment, saying this is proof that the president's lost his mind. So we've set the table. Your thoughts on all on just these varying degrees of the president's meeting the other day?
Well, for some of these guys, you're not going to be able. They're not going to want to convert at all. They have pigeonholed themselves into this idea that the president's not stable and not fit for the office. And once you cross that Rubicon, there's really no going back. And so he could have a very healthy 45-minute discussion on camera amongst congressional leaders, a really healthy back and forth, which is what government is designed to do. And that's not good enough for them. So for the Schmitz of the world and for a lot of the MSNBC crew, they have
but I mean, they're Republicans.
Their flag.
They're Republicans.
Well, I mean, but are they? I mean, I could dispute that. I really could in a lot of these cases. They're not. I don't really like the Republican in name only tag, but that's essentially what these guys are. And a lot of the networks they love the folks who have an R next to their name who want to trash other Republicans, conservatives, what have you. That is manna from heaven for these networks. Notice there's not a lot of that on the Democrat side. Everything is, they're all just, in lock, they're locked arm in arm, united and all those things. But you've got these never Trumpers that have, they're really largely irrelevant in the national discussion.
Yeah,
Bill Kristol the other day, Kevin, I mean, tweeting how he wants Oprah. I mean, he supposedly he's conservative. Supposedly he's Republican. Supposedly he's a voice for the right. There's nothing to like about a potential Oprah Winfrey presidency. I think she may have a chance, but there's really nothing to like about a potential presidency. I mean, she's as liberal as they come. Why Bill Kristol's hatred for Donald Trump is so obvious? He's willing to go down these odd paths, like Oprah Winfrey. God knows who else. They've made their bet, and nothing is going to change that. Dana Bash proves why. She's one of the better reporters in the business. Keeps an open mind, demonstrates that that was a healthy discussion. You'd have to be drinking the Kool-Aid if you didn't enjoy the back and forth. So she proves why she's good at her job.
Yeah,
and then
still kind of
said, Fox is going to do what Fox does these days.
Still, and again, this is way inside baseball, but still a weird dynamic when I see her and John King together. But they got married, then it didn't work out, and
Yeah, it is on election. I kind of think the same thing. They're great people, personally.
Her star has risen, and John King, you remember, was it 10, 15 years ago? John King was the guy.
Well, he does do a pretty decent job on election night.
I think he's great.
Shots backwards and forwards. But it is kind of odd watching Dana and him on live TV 3 feet away from each other. But they seem to make it work. So, kudos to them, I guess.
Right. And for people that are not inside our conversation, they were married, and now they're divorced, and I believe they have a child. They're lovely people. But, again, let's go on to something else here. A review and commentary of the news with David Bozell and our great friend, not to be confused with, I was going to call myself our great friend, Kevin Miller. But, we live in rhymes and cliches in radio. So for people that didn't catch this, we played the clip, but you have Stephen Miller, advisor to the president, on with Jake Tapper. Jake gets so mad at him, he throws him off the set. Then you have this ridiculous story that security had to be called. Now, what's the skinny on this? You know the behind the scenes on what goes on all these shows.
I think the skinny is that he was upset. Didn't have anything to do with security. He was upset the way he was treated. He had every right to be upset about the way he was treated. That said, I thought Stephen could have handled himself on air a little bit better. Now that's tough because we can Monday morning quarterback this stuff to death, and when you're in the the bright lights, it's real easy for us to play Monday morning quarterback. But for example, at the beginning of the interview, in which Jake Tapper says, asked about was Steve Bannon correct? Did Don Jr. Bring these Russians, that he supposedly met with, up to the 26th floor of Trump Tower? Is that correct? And Steve did not answer that question at all. He went on for about 3 minutes, didn't answer the question at all. And Jake asked it again, and Steve went on for another 3 minutes, didn't answer the question at all until the very end of the second try, in which he says, "I wasn't there, I don't know." And that's really what Steve Miller should have led with. He just, to that question, he could have gotten to all of his points.
Right.
But he just should have just said, I wasn't there. I don't know. I have no idea.
Let me put it to you this way.
And that would have been, and Jake would have been satisfied with that.
And let me put it to you this way. I have known Stephen Miller for years. We appeared many times during the Duke lacrosse case. And Stephen Miller is the same on the air as off the air, and he's only more powerful and emboldened. And, you're right. He made a bad call in the line of scrimmage, but here's another guy ripping Jake Tapper to his face going, "You guys got it wrong. You guys did this." And that really resonates to a lot of folks.
Yes, it does. And he's absolutely correct about that. Especially, with the misreporting of the of the WikiLeaks emails and how grossly misreported CNN handled that with barely an apology, barely a correction. And how they said, they went just breathlessly over the course of a day a couple of weeks ago, suggesting that the Trump administration was given the WikiLeaks emails, or the Trump campaign was given the WikiLeaks emails before the WikiLeaks had released them. That was patently false, and their editorial process failed them. I would suggest that it's the agenda that they have that blinds them and leads to failures. So no, Steve is absolutely right about that stuff, and that absolutely does resonate. My only critique is being on the level with him is just, Jake's not the worst of them all. Okay, there are plenty other, but that was a pretty simple opening salvo question that Jake served to him, kind of a softball across the middle of the plate, and Steve, could have handled that one a little bit better. But that's really, that's nitpicky stuff on my part, Kevin.
Well,
it's real easy for us to do that.
Look, I realize that, and that's why you've got to reestablish yourself as our number one go-to guy here at KIDO Talk Radio on the Kevin Miller Show. However, Jake Tapper comes across as a very dignified guy. He's a well-spoken young man. He's written a lot of stuff, but again, showing you that I didn't have a life and still don't. When you make your big splash writing an expose for the Washington Weekly that I dated Monica Lewinsky during the Clinton scandals and appeared on the Kevin Miller Show in Huntsville, Alabama to promote that. Look, your origins are dubious, so I'm going to go with Mr. Miller on this one. Okay.
Totally fair. And I'm with you 1,000%.
Yeah, nobody ever asks about that, by the way. That was his big splash. I'm sure you
got to get out there. You should have put that out on. Do you have an archive, a videotape of that?
Look, I have a cassette somewhere.
An audio clip of that?
I'm sure I have a cassette of it, yeah.
Oh, dig it up. You should put that out.
The real Jake Tapper.
I'm serious. That would be, next time Jake Tapper steps in it,
yeah,
throw that out there.
Say, how dare you, sir? Anyway, let's talk a little bit. Can you hang on for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I know it's not your regularly scheduled time, and that's kind of throwing me off, but if you can hang on for 2 seconds, I've got a couple more thoughts about this DACA deal, no deal, and the president as well. David Bozell joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Our great friend David Bozell joining us now. So I get this in. I have to ask you something totally unscripted. So I'm going off the script that we discussed earlier today. So after doing this program
here we go.
for 23 years in various locations across the country, now here in Idaho, for the first time this program has been invited to CPAC. And,
there you go.
And we've covered many issues. We go to the our folks at Fair Event every year. We've been to the White House. We've done all these things. But CPAC is like the Super Bowl of conservatism, if you will. I'm asking you, and maybe you can, maybe you can't, your thoughts on the value to folks here if we go.
The value to folks in Idaho. Well, everything's streamed, right? Okay, so it's kind of everyone's getting their news and information from different platforms now. I think there's an incredible value for you in the show because you're going to meet people that you're going to put faces to the name that you otherwise might not know. So in that respect, it is sort of the Super Bowl of conservative radio roast. And so I do think there is some incredible amount of value there. But for me personally, I would never leave Idaho if I was there. Not for Washington D.C. anyway.
What are you running for office? That's like a conflicting thing. So I mean,
I know,
is
the
juice worth the squeeze? Is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I think doing a stint there on Radio Row for one of the days is worth it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that sounds like an overwhelming endorsement.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know it sounds terrible because I like Matt. I know Matt, and I've been to CPAC since I was a kid. I mean, I've been in green rooms at CPAC since I was a little boy, which goes to show you a little bit about my upbringing. So look, I've been to a ton of them. Maybe I'm just too. Maybe I'm too cynical about it in that I've been to so many of them. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask, but it is the Super Bowl of conservative radio rows. So yeah, I would definitely consider it for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Note to self. And we have Ted Facebooking. I grew up in Washington. He speaks the truth. Don't leave Idaho. So Ted agrees with you on that
There
one.
you go, Ted. See?
David Bozell.
Hey, Kevin, I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. All right?
David, I'll have to remember that for Mrs. Miller. David Bozell, please stand by. Traffic and weather together at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. David Bozell is very envious of our weather, I would imagine.
Of course I am, always.
Boy, that was a quick one. Boy, would you have
No,
to take a nap?
I didn't know you were throwing that to me. No, I mean, always. I need to get out there and ski
what is this?
Sun Valley.
We have to. Well, look, you can go to the elitist Sun Valley, or you can come to Bogus Basin and hang out with the commoners here at the Treasure
is that
Valley.
really? Is that? I need to know these things. Is Sun Valley the uppity ski place? Because I don't want to go there.
What do you make of that? I mean, that's where everybody goes. But here, let me hold on. Let me hold you accountable. I don't know what has happened to you, sir. We had you peaking. You were like Alabama. You're rolling like the tide, and now all of a sudden, we've got to retrain you. I know it's January, but folks expect a lot from David Bozell from For America.
I know there's too many bourbon and eggnogs over the holidays. That's for sure.
But, full disclosure,
hey,
I
look,
appreciate that. Yes,
Kevin, send me to the resort that's got the high speed quad lift. That's all I really care about. I need to get up the mountain as fast as I can. Okay, there's no dilly-dally dithering on these lifts. Okay, I need high-speed quads and no lines.
Right.
And I'm right as rain.
No dilly-dilly here. Okay, finally, what about this DACA wall thing?
Yeah.
Many people are fired up going,
Yeah. Well, look, the hardliners, and we all know them, and I love them all. There's going to have to be a deal made. More than anything, Kevin, how awful was Barack Obama when he made a decision to give these kids special protections, knowing he didn't have the authority, but more importantly, knowing, and he knew it, that this would pit American versus American about kids, and not putting Americans first and putting these kids and these families first, but the ripple effect is that it's American versus American on this issue, and it's so divisive. And that was Barack Obama's call. And so the president is trying to unravel that and try to come up with a solution. We're all trying to come up with a solution. But a deal, I think, has to be made. Wall funding, end of chain migration, E-Verify, we need to make sure that we have the stopgaps in this bill to prevent this from ever happening again. Reagan made the mistake in '86, and it's just opened the door to bad policy and bad decisions ever since. And it's up to the president and congressional Republicans to put their foot down and put it down firmly that if we want to help these kids and these families that are already here, fine. But in conjunction and in parallel to that, we're going to have all of those things that I just mentioned. It has to be that way, because you're not going to fool the American people, and you're not going to fool the country. You're not going to fool the Trump base. Information spreads too openly and too fast and too quickly and too widely. The president, I think, will, whatever happens, I think the president will try to claim victory, because that's just, what he does. But you're not going to be able to, the wall, arguably, was probably the most famous campaign promise in modern political history. It's right up there with "Read My Lips." And you saw how well that ended for George H.W. Bush when he betrayed that promise. So if Trump goes back on that, he could suffer the same fate. I'm confident that the administration, their wish list in exchange for DACA was really strong. So let's hope they get it across the finish line.
Indeed, David Bozell, we always appreciate you, and we will talk to you soon, my friend.
Okay, buddy. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. David Bozell joining us from foramerica.org. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding. It's been a long time, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Well, I think the last time we talked to you, you were a state representative, and now you're married, you have a kid, you have a dog, you're House Minority Leader. Life's good for you.
Well, yeah, more or less. I think we've talked a little bit in between all of those occurrences, but yeah, since I first was elected, my life has changed a lot.
Yeah, well, the media folks, we like to embellish a little.
Yes, well, I always appreciate that about the media folks.
Well, let's take a look at the legislative schedule, the agenda. Your thoughts on the State of the State speech and the last go around for the Hulk Hogan of Idaho politics, Butch Otter.
His State of the State, I think, of the 6 that I've been in, was probably his best. And I think that a lot of the things he brought up are going to result in forward progress for Idaho. And a lot of bipartisanship is in a lot of the proposals that he had inside of his State of the State, including lowering the unemployment insurance tax for businesses in Idaho and saving millions of dollars, which hopefully will go into wages and kind of help the average Idahoan make a little more money, focusing on higher ed and technical skill development, apprenticeship programs. I mean, he had a lot in that State of the State. I'm sure you want to unpack it, so I'm open to any questions you have.
Well, that's a nice throw it back to me, if you will. A lot of people that listening to this program will go, well, if the House minority likes what the governor says, it can't be good for Republicans. The big issue that happened last year, it seems, the grocery tax and the elimination of the grocery tax. Do you think that will happen this legislative session?
I was one of the folks that voted for the elimination of the grocery tax. I think that the conversation has to be on the table because there were so many people that voted for it. The governor didn't include it in his State of the State. That was a real disappointment. He did include kind of equalizing the money that's going to be coming in from the federal tax reforms, which is going to cause Idahoans to have to pay more at the state level. He did address that, but he addressed it in a way that I think is particularly unfair to families. Whereas if you eliminated the grocery tax, you'd find a more fair way to deal with the monies that families are paying. I don't know that it'll get through. And if it does get through, it might get vetoed by the governor, and then we'll decide whether or not the body really has the ability to override one of the governor's vetoes.
Well, we take a look at the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party. do you marvel at the infighting that's going on between the many factions of the Republican Party? Do you notice that at all?
The infactions, excuse me, I've only been in the legislature for a week, and I've already got my first cold of the year, so I'm really excited about that. But going back to your question, the infighting within the Republican Party is always something worth marveling at. It is, I think, a result of a matter of supermajority having absolute power. And so as the Democrats strengthen over time and become much stronger and more populist in our views, I think you will see the Republicans coalesce around their always and eternal common enemy, the Democrats. But for now, I am enjoying them fighting internally. In fact, I love it.
Indeed, our great friend, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. You're quoted in the paper about the governor's state of the state speech. He will make it even better for corporations. He will make it even better for the wealthy. But if you have a family of 5, you're going to pay more under his current plan. Your thoughts?
That's what I said. And that's true. Right now, he's going to offer an $85 non-refundable tax credit for families with children. And then he's going to lower the income tax rate. And when you do that, you actually can't get the rate to a place where a family of 5 is going to pay less than they have been in the past. If maybe a family of 6, but it's somewhere in there where you start to get into a little bit difficulty of larger families are going to have a more substantial impact from the federal tax reform. Now, I want to be clear that we're going to be paying less as a community to the federal government, but if you're going to do tax reform and equalize that at the state level, you might focus on families as well as corporations and the wealthy. I don't think you do it on the back of families. You just don't.
Our great friend, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding, joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning. Before we get to some phone calls from the usual suspects here, I do have to ask you your thoughts on the governor's race. A.J. Belukoff jumping in, Paulette Jordan jumping in. What about you?
No, absolutely not. I got a 3-month-old daughter, and so I'm going to continue to enjoy my time in the legislature. I'm glad the Democrats have a primary. It's going to force conversations even more so. I think that the Republican primary is doing the same thing, but I'm quite content with what I have and trying to figure out how to make ends meet while staying in the legislature.
It's a very good point because a lot of us, we don't know the inner workings, but let's go inside you as a person. I know you're going, gosh, no wonder it's been 37 years since I've talked to Kevin Miller, but what do you go through as Matt Erpelding, the individual, balancing making a living and this part-time job that's very important?
Yeah. If you talk to virtually any legislator who is still of working age, you have to have some real specific jobs in order to be able to do this. It's really tough if you work a full-time traditional job for your employer to let you have 3 months off every year. And so as a 43-year-old, I just turned 43 yesterday, I'm in a unique position in that I've got my own small business. Typically, because I'm a outfitter and a guide, typically my season is in the summer and in the fall. And so I tend to have less work in the winter, which has been good for me to balance the legislature. And then I also teach a little bit. Before I was elected, I taught at CWI. Now I teach just a couple courses a year at BSU in the fall. And so what my economic portfolio looks like is quite diverse, and sometimes it feels a little piecemealed. The benefit of that is I'm able to spend a lot more time with my daughter, and as we look at the way that we'll structure our nuclear family, that's probably going to increasingly become a piece of my role, is as the caretaker for Louise, which I'm excited about. even as it tends to deviate from, what you would consider a normal nuclear family. But I think it's going to be really fun.
All right, our great friend, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding with Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. Again, it just, Bill Clinton was famous for compartmentalizing. But I mean, on one hand, you're talking about your guide business, you're talking about teaching, and then you've got to deal with the majority leader and everything else. Sometimes you must just step back and go, what in the world am I doing? I know it's you're serving the public, but a lot of us don't see you as a person. We see you as a political person or a government, operative, not operative, but you know what I'm saying. We don't.
Sure.
We're not inside your world.
No, and that's true. And I think the other thing is it's very easy once a person goes into public life for folks who don't know them to essentially objectify them, whether they're in the minority or the majority. They become the battering ram for mistakes that are made in government or values that deviate from your values. And when you really boil it down, especially in the Idaho legislature, most of us are just humans trying to make it through the day like everybody else.
Again, that's why we appreciate you coming on. So we've got a few folks that would like to speak with you. And do we have you for a few more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. And again, you and I have never met, but we've talked on the phone. I always appreciate you back in the early days of this program, and we appreciate you now, Matt. So please hang on, sir. We go to the phones, and we're joined by Liberal Steve at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
Good morning, gentlemen. And I'm all fired up. Good morning. I'm all fired up because it looks like hemp will pass this year in the state legislature. There will be a bill introduced by, is it Moon from Stanley? Representative Moon?
Yes, and can you, I didn't hear what you said. What will pass this year?
Legislation allowing hemp to be grown for research in the state of Idaho.
Oh.
Which
well,
is the beginning.
I'm on board with it. I think that you have a guarantee that a bill might be introduced. I'm not sure that it'll pass, but if it's on the floor, I'm voting for it, Steve.
Well, it almost got passed last year, almost. But I'm excited about it because we import into the United States $500 million worth of hemp product.
Okay, well, we only have
$500 million.
Right. Okay, thank you. Which brings us to a good question. What about the legalization movement? Whether it's medical or recreational, are you for either?
Yeah, I am. I think it's time we start to have a conversation about how we treat marijuana in this country. At a minimum, I think it's time we start treating it as something that has a medicinal value. And I think if we start the conversation there, the first thing we have to really do is talk about decriminalizing marijuana in Idaho. You can't have kids, I say kids now that I'm 43, but you can't have undergraduate college kids
right.
going across the border into Washington and Oregon, buying marijuana, coming back across the border into Idaho, now having committed either a misdemeanor or a felony. And if it's a felony and they get picked up and they're in college, they have the potential to get kicked out of college, number one. But even bigger than that, they're going to lose their financial aid. And honestly, I can't wrap my head around that. Why would you put a student who's done something stupid, don't get me wrong, take away their financial aid and possibly ruin their economic future?
Because they
that
broke the
doesn't
law.
Make sense to me.
They broke the law.
I understand that you can break the law. I understand that. But removing their financial aid, making it so they can't continue to go to school, only possibly perpetuates more breaking the law. And not only that, mandatory minimums, they're questionable at best. And if we're talking about fiscally conservative policies, mandatory minimums cost the state a lot of money for nonviolent drug offenders. It really does.
So we get this correct. You're in favor of medical marijuana. What about recreational marijuana? I don't want to misquote you at all.
For now, I'm in favor of medical marijuana. Idaho's not. I believe in incremental improvements. I voted for the CBD oil bill. I hope that comes back again this year. I was incredibly disappointed at Governor Otter for vetoing that. And I believe that there's value behind medical marijuana.
But finally, before we get to Pete from Mountain Home at KIDO Talk Radio, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding with us. What do you make of the modus operandi of the governor? If there's something unpopular or something that is debated, it's through leadership, it's brought up late in the session, and then the legislature doesn't get a chance to override the veto, whether it was the gas tax or something else. Do you think that's fair, or would you like to see everything brought to the table and nothing left for the governor to sign or to veto after you all leave town?
Sure. So could I make a clarification? Because that's not necessarily the modus operandi of the governor. That's the modus operandi of the House and Senate majority leadership. They're the ones that make the choice to do that, not the governor.
Well, you don't think that the governor, though, isn't aware of that?
I'm sure that the governor is aware of that, but
and if the governor wanted something,
the one that's calling the shots inside the legislature.
Yeah, but if the governor wants something brought forth for you guys to take a look at, okay, no, look, you deal with that each and every day. Point well taken.
Okay, yeah, it is unfortunate that that's been the approach, and that's going to have to change thanks to the lawsuit over the grocery tax. So we may still bring things at the very end of the legislature, but we're going to stick around for a few days now to make sure that if the governor vetoes it and there's a veto override attempt, we're all here. So that's one good thing that came out of the grocery tax from last year.
Quickly, we go to Pete in Mountain Home for House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding. Pete, good morning.
Hi. I saw a editorial that you wrote a day or two ago in the paper on a 1992 housing assistance fund that has never been funded. Here in Idaho, and I'm wondering why not add that to the list of things on the Idaho tax form that people can donate to, like they donate to the National Guard families or whatever, and put that down as a checkoff, and so people who want to support that can just do it as they can add that to their taxes and help support that fund.
That's actually a really great idea. That's one way to start getting some revenue into that fund. Now, you understand that fund wasn't for individuals to have like housing vouchers. That fund was to find ways to help developers actually build affordable and workplace housing, which is a little bit different model. But I agree with you, because it was a public-private partnership, private dollars coming into that could come from a donation. But the legislature never set up a board of directors. Or actually, the governor never set up a board of directors for the Idaho Housing Trust Fund, and as a result, it's just laid dormant for 25 years. And if you don't even have a board of directors, you can't have a way to collect any resources.
You wouldn't know where to spend it even then.
Exactly. But I agree with you, because it is a public-private partnership. That's a brilliant idea. I appreciate you bringing it.
You know, and if you get 10, 15,000 people in the state, everybody kicks in $20. Or whatever. I mean, that could help.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe you could give Pete credit for that if you bring that up.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding with us. I know you've got a busy day. We'd love to have you back, and even not in session. It's been my bad for not to having you on more frequently. We appreciate you joining us, sir. We always enjoy the banner.
Well, happy to do it, Kevin, as you know. So just keep me posted. Let me know.
I will. Thank you again, sir.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Our great friend, House Minority Leader Matt Erpelding. Your thoughts next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO. We're riding in with Kevin Miller. Ride home tonight with Sean Hannity on KIDO Talk Radio. 107.5 FM and 580 AM.
And quickly, before we get to traffic, we go to Liberty Linda. We've got about a minute and a half, ma'am. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, Kevin. Yeah, in regard to what Michael Snyder was talking about, in regard to the IRS this morning, you know, after World War II, they changed just one word, the word may to must. So in other words, it made a big difference. Now when a person makes a mistake on their taxes, it became against the law instead of just a mistake. So people now are shaking in their boots if they make a mistake. And so anyway, I just wanted to make talk about that one word that they changed from may to must. That's very important in our IRS when we're doing that each year.
Well, Liberty Linda, we apologize for the brief time. We thank you for joining us here.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Fox News next on your home for Fox News on the radio, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.